Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Pluto in conjunction with your ascendant. And this would be like the equivalent of having Scorpio rising. So that's what makes astrology so interesting, because we can have a rising sign, we can have a sun sign that is totally different. And then when we're talking about the aspects, they can add a whole new level of influence. And this is why it's so simplistic to just focus on, what sign a particular planet is in, and things like that, because you have the house placements and you have the aspects. So in this case, this could definitely affect how you look. And when I was doing a video on Scorpio rising or Pluto in the first house, I have talked about this idea of the person who's even blonde and having this intensity about them. Typically I would say that there's a more swarthy complexion. It's darker. The eyes may be very, dark, and I don't know about brooding, but definitely penetrating people, looking at people in the eye and it having quite an effect on other people. The rising sign can actually be how you act in social situations. And I want to give a shout out. I've never gone on this website before. It's called journalofcosmology.com. And that's where I got one of those phrases describing the function of the rising sign. And I love that. I'm going to use that now because, I do say that's kind of the persona, the rising sign, but I like that idea of how you act in social situations, because one of the things they say here is that this type of person can act in a controlling way. Now, I wouldn't say that this is going to be true 100% of the time. When there are more challenging behaviors, when you're talking about any astrological placement, this is going to be when a person does not feel secure, does not feel balanced in who they are, that they will be prone to the shadow elements. So you could say these are the shadow elements. The desire to have control, power over other people leads to manipulation, and being obsessive. These are very familiar words that we use when we describe Scorpio and when we describe other aspects with Pluto, or eighth house matters, because that's Scorpio's house and that's Pluto's domain. So yeah, this is a very interesting thing. So a person who has this conjunction may come across in a very serious way. Now, let's say your sun sign is Capricorn, that's not going to be something that's inconsistent with what your sun sign represents. But what if you're a Gemini? What if you're a Libra? So I'm thinking of signs that I think of as kind of frothy, kind of light. This is kind of more of a heavy influence. That's what intensity means, the emotionally complex individual. And so this will give a demeanor that is kind of more intense than you would expect from maybe like a Leo or a Sagittarius. And even, the funny thing is, you could have somebody who has a sun in Sagittarius and they have Aries rising, but they have a conjunction between Pluto and the Ascendant, and they still come across as the heavy a little bit. Well, doesn't the heavy mean the villain? So I don't know if I want to say that, but as somebody that is very serious and that they have this complexity. Now, sometimes I get the feeling that the word complex can also be code for a difficult personality. And I wouldn't be surprised if in some instances that's exactly what it is, because the person is going to be, I would also say, quite mysterious. I don't see that mentioned here, but I do believe that that kind of person is going to be withholding. This is the impulse of Pluto, is in an effort to have control, is to be kind of secretive. And while this is kind of a, I feel like there might be a lot going on in terms of how the person grew up. And that might even be like a coping mechanism of sorts. You have to look at other aspects of the chart to get a greater feel for this. But I think that in a lot of cases, when people act that way, it's because they're trying to control situations. And by being an open book, the person may feel like they're opening themselves up to possible attack or control by another individual. And it's like this almost like a defensive quality, but not in that active sense where somebody's always reacting to other people's statements about them. People who are defensive and another person says something that might be innocent and the defensive person reacts as if they've been insulted by the other person. They're kind of giving away this insecurity that they have about themselves. No, I mean, a person who has Scorpio rising, has the conjunction between Pluto and the Ascendant, they may have a poker face. They're not going to give away anything. But that is, to me, a covert form of defensiveness because they're trying to protect against others. So there might be trust issues that we could say these types of people have. And sometimes it might come in handy in certain instances, but there can also be the situation where they are inscrutable and other people have a hard time really empathizing or sympathizing with them and feeling a sense of closeness with them. Or even if you're just, because this is more of like first impressions. So it could be that the other person doesn't feel like there's a chance that they could be friends with this individual because they are too closed in or closed up. And so that could work against that person in certain ways. Showing vulnerability can actually draw people closer to you. And it's important to note that vulnerability does not mean somebody who is complaining about their life and their problems. It's about being able to not have those defenses up and showing that you have feelings, that you are capable of being hurt, that just the more softer aspects of yourself. And that means that you're not going to be controlling others. That means that you're going to be showing that you, like them, have your own issues that you feel uncertain about. And yet, you can always have a certain reserve that where you're not just an open book, because that is sometimes people overshare and they don't leave anything to themselves, and people may react in a negative way to that as well. So there can be a sense of balance. And but this can attract other people. There can be, I don't know if you would call it a charisma necessarily, but definitely a magnetism. And the difference between charisma and magnetism, I feel like there's almost like this invisible quality of when it comes to magnetism. With charisma, it might be the person's outward personality, that they have certain traits that other people find very attractive, that are not, I'm not just talking about physical appearance, but the way that people act, behave. Um, and this is almost hard to define when we're talking about magnetism. And there's that phrase, animal magnetism, meaning that it's a sexual attraction that the person gives off. But I think that yeah, and it could definitely be very seductive because Pluto is associated with that. But they have here, like, and they were mentioning women, they mentioned beauty. I don't know. I mean, it could be, but I just think that I don't think Pluto is particularly associated with beauty. To me, it's more energetic in terms of people being attracted. Um, a powerful image. And they mentioned charm. Yeah, I just find that odd. They're talking about specifically with women. With men, let's see if they say anything specific. Um, they mention with men. I really don't think they should generalize these things based on gender, because I'm sure women could do the exact same thing. But they're talking about this idea of like leaving no stone unturned. Probably talking about this detective quality that we do associate with Scorpio, about needing to know the truth. They call it curious. I'll just read it verbatim. They say, it might sometimes bother you when you have to leave things alone, especially since you're curious-minded, impulsive, and investigative. Quite often, however, this might end up resulting in an obsessive and compulsive need to control the things around you, resulting in fear and distance from the people close to you. So it's basically trying to ferret out secrets from other people. Or if somebody's talking to you about something going on in their life, then you become, you give them the third degree about it. I know I do that with my partner sometimes, or other people too, because I have the sun in the 8th house. So this is just like par for the course with any kind of scorpionic thing. But I don't think that's related to gender. So it's kind of weird that they do this. But in any case, basically that obsessive nature can be unnerving to other people, because they feel like you're trying to maybe psychoanalyze them and expose them. And the other thing, I've had like, when I've done private readings, even, I've had people, I think even more than one person, but I remember somebody saying, I feel almost exposed, because when I was like analyzing the chart, and it's like, in a way, it's like I don't want to do that, because I know I'm a private person. I don't think anyone really wants, I know I don't really want to invade somebody's privacy, but I feel like this need to be really like deep, to dive deeply into a situation. And I think this is how you probably see things as well, and how you behave in a social environment. So it's possible that going to a party is something that may not be particularly appealing to you if you have to just engage in small talk. that might be torturous for you because you might feel that it's a waste of time to be in that type of environment if that's the level of discourse, if it's only going to get to that level. However, if you are around people who tend to be like you, it could be absolutely enlivening to be in that environment. There was something else I wanted to say about this, and I can't think of what it was. Oh, what I was going to say is that even though I haven't seen anything on here, on this website, I feel like this can also be the flip side, where other people feel like telling their life story to you, and you end up not revealing much of yourself. And, they've told you everything about themselves practically. And I certainly, not having this conjunction, but having other things that are similar in other areas that are similar to Scorpio, I've had this myself. And it's pretty interesting, when you just happen to be sitting at a bus stop or you're somewhere in public and a perfect stranger comes up to you and you learn their life story. Sometimes it happens, it unfolds in a very interesting manner. And you've never even exchanged names, and this person's just telling you these things. So that can be, Scorpio, Pluto, that can be the psychologist. So you may have a very good insight into people, a perception, extra perceptive way of perceiving other people that lends itself to that kind of behavior. And that might be why you're interested in learning what other people, what makes other people tick. And some people, they just can't handle that because they're not really delving into their own psyche. So they sure as hell don't want somebody else doing it. And they don't want to bring it up because they're not really prepared to deal with that yet. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but just if you feel like you have a hard time connecting with people, meeting new people, it could be because there's something about you that intimidates other people, I feel. So, the other thing I wanted to say about this is that if you identify with some of the more shadow aspects, and they were mentioning even like anger, violence, I don't think that you can just look at this and say that that's going to be the case. I mean, even with when you talk about Scorpio, and I would say, I don't know if it's the Pluto so much as the Mars, because Scorpio is ruled by both of those planets. Maybe Pluto about vengefulness. So that's another form that doesn't have to come in the form of violence, but it could be this feeling of like somebody has to pay if they do something against you. And unfortunately, for people that have control issues, lack of control over themselves because they're very undeveloped, that can lead to acting out in various ways if you have this combination. If, it's like having Scorpio rising. A person who is more developed can have a very noble demeanor. But the ones who are less developed, yes, obviously they can have anger issues. You have to look at the moon sign. You can't just look at one thing. But the key is always about diving deep within yourself and tracing your complex emotions back to their source. Because just like you do it with other people, you have this power to do it with yourself. You're a very intuitive person and insightful, and you can see where this all began, and then you can gain mastery over it. because it's of the lower nature. And same thing as I was talking about with manipulation, controlling tendencies. These are fear-based. A person doesn't want to, they have that saying, losing face. That's part of the ego. The feeling that somebody else is dissing you by their behavior, by what they're saying, their attitude. If somebody cheats on you, how do you react to that? True power is not reactive, based on other people's actions and not being dependent on any one person to have in your life. If somebody leaves, if they deceive you, if they cheat, whatever, that's on them. They have to deal with whatever that represents. But you don't have to be somebody who is controlled by that and that needs to do a tit for tat. And this, power, this is a very powerful position if you can get on top of yourself in terms of how you perceive life. So anyway, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. And if you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.